How to deal with anxiety as a man. We're going to talk about this on the Men's Mental Health podcast today. Welcome back to the Men's Mental Health podcast today. So, anxiety is something I've certainly experienced in my life many times throughout the years. And I know I'm not alone. And I know it can be a thing for men. I've been there and I've heard other men open up and share it with me. That anxiety is not something that I or they have openly wanted to talk about because we have these views that it makes us seem weak if we share like that we're feeling anxious. And I know keeping it inside for me is just very damaging. It just builds up and builds up and builds up. And the tension builds up and yeah, I've certainly felt a lot of struggles I've had in my life. I'm going to give some tips today, just short and simple. But I've certainly had experiences when I woke up being like with my brain on super fight or flight mode. When I'm very activated, I'm like, okay, what's going wrong? What do I need to worry about? Like that's what my brain used to do. It used to be like, okay, what do I need to worry about? And that's because I hadn't trained it to think in a certain way. Going through a lot of development myself and then really applying, not just learning, but actually applying, really transformed my relationship with myself. And not that I don't have worries or concerns. Of course I do. Like, I'm a human being, it's going to come up. But I certainly am not wired for anxiety the way I used to be. And yeah, I was at a point where I had medication for it very briefly. And I don't want to go into a whole debate of should we take medication, should we not? That's not for me to say for you. That is up for you to decide. That is for you, and if you go and seek a professional to do that, right? I'm not going to make comments about whether medication's right for anyone else or not. For me, personally, it was not useful because it was basically just reducing the symptoms of anxiety, what was on the top, and it didn't even do that very well. Now, that's obviously only one kind of medication. But like when I actually addressed the root cause, what was going on, and started working on my psychology, that's when I felt a transformation. That's when I was able to feel a lot calmer, a lot more clearer, a lot more peaceful than having like the anxiety. And what is anxiety? Anxiety for me is the fear of something happening that may or may not happen. It usually doesn't, right? And therefore our brain is like wired in a way that it's life or death. Now, of course, right, things like I'm going to die one day, everyone's going to die one day, right? Okay. But when we start coming from a place of like, what are people going to think? What if I mess up in this speech? What if something goes wrong with my job or this and that? Then actually, that's not a great place to live if like our brain's on that place all the time and we're anxious about everything. And for me, it's just a case of rewiring, just for me personally. And again, like, I do appreciate there are people on medication. I'm definitely not saying anything otherwise. But for me, like personally, it's been a case of rewiring, thinking in a different way. And I can go into some points today. And definitely when you talk about anxiety, there's always someone who's going to get sensitive about it. Let's not deny that. And I'm just going to call this out. Like, I know it can be serious for some people, but some people like to be attached to it. They like to say, oh no, I couldn't do that because I am anxiety. Well, that's not very empowering, is it? And that's what one of my first points is. I'm not saying stressful things aren't going to happen or perceive stress and anxiety are all perceptions. They're all illusions. It's not that like challenges are not going to come in. No, that's always going to happen. But it's like the degree to which we experience the emotion, experience them, that makes a difference in our lives, I personally found. So I want to give some tips to you today in terms of what has really helped me for anxiety, because I know we can really struggle. And I want to keep it a three today because I don't want to overcomplicate it. If you're in that place where your body feels like it's taking over, like you're feeling like trembling in you, there's anxiousness, then you want to keep things very, very simple, because that's your mind starts off and it sends signals to the body and you get into that extreme anxiety feeling. and it's not even conscious sometimes. Like you can have triggers and things that are going to like make you anxious. So I want to go through 3 points I want to share with you today. So the first, let's get into it. So the first point is the body. Get into the body. Do some work on the body rather than being in the mind. This is just what has worked for me again, all of these. So if you are like feeling really anxious, like your heart beats up, your breathing is shallow, which is what the body starts to experience in anxiety, then you try to think your way out of it to begin with. For me, that's a challenge rather than going into the body and moving, breathing in a different way. The first thing, and this is something I always remember from Tony Robbins that helped me, even though I don't follow him as much these days, but he said, this is a success strategy, state, story, strategy. What does that mean? A lot of us will go, right, I've got to think of the right strategy, then I'll be thinking the right thoughts, and then I'll feel better. He actually says it's the other way around. If you can get yourself to feel good by moving your body, changing your breathing, then you start getting a different thought in your head, and then you have the answer. And I think that's very, very true. When I train myself every single day to like feel good. And I don't always feel good, but I feel good the majority of the time as opposed to I used to. But when I get into that state, I have more ideas. I'm able to impact lives. I have like downloads of my business and for helping people. And I've attracted some great people into my life. In particular, one very special person. And that's because I've trained myself to be in a certain state when I used to like attract, not chaos people, but, you know, situations and people weren't quite right for my life. And it would make me very anxious as opposed to training my state. So start with the body. Things that I suggest, breath work, lots on YouTube. If you want a personal session, message me, right? Very reasonable in terms of what I offer with it. And I'll also give you the price up front and things like that and what the investment is. But I offer breath work, but there's also videos on YouTube. I'd suggest working with someone like me who can really facilitate the change though, rather than you going it alone. So breath work is key. I'm very biased on that because it's changed my life and it's amazing, right? Or you could be doing something like somatic dance, get the moves going, get some music on. But starting your body is key in terms of anxiety and training yourself every day to like shake through the body, allow it to move through the body. That's why after exercise we feel better because we're moving stuff, emotions through the body. So that's number one, I would suggest. Number two, I want to be really clear on this one. Stop identifying with anxiety, right? People love to be, even without realizing, and I've been there, so I'm going to call myself out for it in the past. People love to identify themselves with labels. You hear it all the time, right? Now, some people do have like serious conditions and things like that. I totally understand that. But I hear things like, I am depressed, I am anxiety, and I am being sensitive here. And then things like, I have ADHD. Now, these things are real things. I'm not denying that. But like, when you identify with things, you will become it more and more. And do you really want to identify with anxiety? And often people do it, I'm just going to call this out, for attention, for love, right? It's not, and that they don't even know they're doing it consciously, but it's often we associate like having a struggle with getting more love, but actually it just keeps causing the problem to go and go. Instead, and again, it's about asking yourself if this is true for you, right? Ask yourself a question, right? But like, if you're saying, I have anxiety, I am anxiety, you're going to continue doing that. So stop identifying with it. You can say, it's not about pushing it away. It's not about suppressing your emotion. It's about, this is what I did for me. It is, right, I am a human being currently experiencing the feeling of anxiety. It is not me. I'm going to experience it and allow it to go through my body and process it. It might have been shaking it out. It like sometimes when I build up a little bit in the day, like there's a lot going on, a lot to think about, I will shake out. I will like shake my body out. I will change my breathing, like we talked about on the first point, but I do not identify with it. It is something that, yeah, maybe I've been conditioned to think like in a certain way, but don't identify with it, right? Because the more you identify with it, the more you go into the role of being a victim of like, oh, this is controlling me. I cannot control my own life. And that doesn't feel very empowering. People don't like doing that because they actually have to take responsibility for their life a lot of the time, right? And again, it's about finding the balance, because I do appreciate some people really have challenges with things. There is like brain chemistry that's been impacted in certain like mental health challenges, right? And people do need genuine medication. But I also see people like who are like, I'm really anxious at the moment. You're also drinking a lot of alcohol. You're also eating a lot of sugary foods. You're also spending a lot of time on social media. Of course, you're going to feel anxious, right? It's about taking responsibility for how you're feeling. And it's so empowering when you can live in that space. And then number 3 is conditioning yourself into, actually, I'm going to add something else onto the second point as well. I'd also ask yourself, find evidence of like past when you've overcome challenges or things you're worried about, because the more you can search for that in your brain, the more it's going to go, oh yeah, I was worried about that, but actually what that meant was that, right? There's no certainty in life. Of course, there's going to be things you're unsure. But actually, if you look at past references and things you've overcome in the past, that'll give you more confidence in you. I found as well, because I've been like, I'm worried about that. And then like, actually it turned out good, like so many times, right? Now, I have had cases when it was like a worst case scenario, like losing my job and things like that. I was worried about it for ages and it did actually happen. But then it was like, even then I was able to work through it. So it's like, you know, obviously when people die, they die. Like, can't really do much at the end of the day about that. But it's like, what can you do and what can you be in control of and what did you overcome? So that's something I'm going to add to that point about not identifying with anxiety as well. Because in the past, you've overcome something, like the anxiety wasn't you and you got to somewhere. And then number 3 is condition yourself to be confident and certain in yourself. There's no certainty in life. Like if you think there's certainty in life or you're going to get a certain result or something, that's rubbish. Like people are like I offer podcast coaching and I put clearly in my contract, there's no guarantees in this, because people sell guarantees and it's a lie. There is no guarantee, right? There's a thing called the money back guarantee, which like, yeah, if you're not satisfied after a couple of sessions, I give money back. No one's ever asked me for money back, by the way. But like, that's things people can do. But like, say you guarantee to get someone a result or something's going to happen in life is rubbish, because there's no guarantees in life apart from you're born and you'll leave the planet at some point. They also say taxes is a guarantee as well. Close, right? Probably close to a guarantee. There's another guarantee, almost guarantee. It's a guarantee a lot there. Is that if you continue doing what you're doing, you're going to get the same results. That's always guaranteed as well. That's always what I say to people. But yeah, like condition yourself. There's no guarantee, but you can be certain in yourself. So condition yourself, put your alarm on several times a day. This is what I do. And remind yourself to feel certain and confident in yourself, because the more you do that, the more you condition yourself to be like certain and confident in yourself. So putting your alarm off like every 2 hours, you don't have to even put a sound. I just have a reminder. Mine's even just gone off. And then it reminds you to be certain yourself. Just feel yourself, feel that confidence and certainty in your body. And the more you can do that, the more condition yourself for certainty. And as a result, you will start training your brain to think in that way. And of course, there will be challenges, but the more you can default to that more confident state, the more confident you're going to feel. So these are my tips on how to deal with anxiety as a man as we go through them again. Number 1 is starting the body, breathing, somatic dance, do things to get you in more into the body and move through your body than trying to think through anxiety. Number 2, stop identifying with anxiety and then start looking for evidence of things you've overcome in the past. That could have been 2 points, but it's 1, right? And then number 3 we talked about was putting on an alarm and conditioning yourself to feel certain in yourself multiple times a day. So that's what I got for you today. Thank you so much for listening. And remember to lead with your heart and not with fear.